Hello and welcome to another episode of the To Baldly Go podcast. I'm your host, Aaron, and I want to thank you for joining me on my mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to baldly go where so many have gone before. I've started with Star Trek, the original series, to learn why people love this show so much, and just maybe come to love it myself. I'm joined tonight by my wife Abby and our friend Nate as we discuss Shakespeare and an introduction to Romulans in the next two episodes of Star Trek, The Conscience of the King and Balance of Terror. And with that, whenever you're ready, ahead, Warp Factor 1. First episode, The Conscience of the King. So, Abby a while back said that she would like to see me after kind of the cold open give a thought or a prediction of what would happen in the episode and see if I can kind of peg it. So this one, the opening was them in a theater watching Macbeth being performed, and ended with a guy with an eye patch saying, "That voice, he's back. That man on stage, I'm certain of it. That's Kodos the Executioner." So my prediction, I paused the episode at that point and wrote my prediction that Kodo is actually the guy that's mentioned. So when they're looking at him saying, "Yes, that is Kodo," however, I guessed that there would be some reveal that the guy with the eye patch was actually the violent executioner. Once all was said and done, which you fast forward 10 minutes and Kirk saying, "It's Tom Layton. He's dead." She's like, "Well,
There goes that theory.
so I was
Well,
way off on that. I guess do we want to say kind of what our ratings were of this
yes,
episode
I'd love to
overall?
hear. Yes, I would love to hear. I'm gonna shut my mouth. What did you think?
Overall, uh I thought the episode was kind of strange
Yep.
when compared to everything else. It had some moments, but overall I give it a solid nah. So I gave it a 5, though
Yeah.
I could maybe be sold on a 6 and say that it was merely okay. But this was the first episode that we've watched that I would classify as basically being mediocre.
Okay.
Um yeah, it was strange, and I don't know if it was just the Shakespearean theater going on in it, which seemed very out of place in that
But but
setting.
but does it? We've commented before at how Shakespearean this show is
Well,
sometimes.
I mean, yeah, when you look at anything like that, pretty much any story could be described as Shakespearean, though, or at
But
least
some of
somewhat influenced. So,
the cinematography and how they
yeah.
approach things and like is
Oh,
very
yeah.
reminiscent of stage acting, right?
Right. Right. But overall, the episode just didn't really do it for me, I guess.
Yep.
I wasn't shocked by the reveal at the end, which I'm sure was supposed to be this big surprise. I had a note fairly early in the episode where I said the actress seems somewhat off. So clearly
You're just
something
saying that
wasn't
because she was
right.
actually into Kirk.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought there were some interesting interactions in the episode, but overall, I was just underwhelmed by it.
Okay.
What about
Abby,
you?
how about you?
I
I'll
want to
hear
hear yours first.
it. Um, I think I'm almost the exact opposite of you. Um, I really enjoyed this episode. I went into it like I was more looking forward to the next one because I remembered that episode. I knew what that episode was about. This one I didn't remember anything about it going into it. And I found myself pausing it every couple of minutes to write down some line of dialogue that I just really liked. Um, I loved the interactions there between the characters. So some of the one-liners, some of the philosophical ramblings as they were. I gave it an 8. I had almost convinced myself to give it a 9. I was teeter-tottering on that. I really, really enjoyed this episode.
That's hilarious. So as normal, Nate and I are on the same page. I I watched both today.
Okay.
I watched one earlier and then I
Yep.
watched the second one this evening and
Yep.
agreed. Second one was epic. And we'll talk
Yep.
about that one in a little bit. But this one I remember watching and being like, this feels like Star Trek to me.
Mhm.
Now, Aaron mentioned the Shakespearean aspect and how that really bothered him and like how it's like
I didn't say
or how not
bothered.
bothered, that's not the right word, but it was something that it flagged to you that was like had that Shakespearean thing to it, not just how they filmed it but the actual like Shakespeare play. And what's funny is for me that's so Star Trek. Every single season of every show or every single like whatever you call it series has Shakespeare in that exact way, and it's very very prevalent throughout the entire show
Mhm.
that they will have, and they will go back to Shakespeare and reference Shakespeare and essentially mirror it in the episode. And that is so, so common. And so as soon as they did that, I was like, we're starting it because you're going to see it again. And they all watch it. And a lot of these captains who are very successful captains quote it and will like have it. And we've seen kind of Kirk building up to this. Now, I know we're going to talk about episode film order and stuff like that. Let's pretend that the writers had a somewhat idea what they wanted to do a little bit when they wrote scripts, okay? And they wanted that cohesion. So that's how I looked at it from that lens, and I thought that was very cohesive. And yes, you knew it was the girl the entire time. We all knew it was the girl.
But every
But
episode is like that too. I mean, there
that's
aren't.
such a believable, it's just such a believable storyline, right? That is something that people do. Kids get confused. And if you're growing up as the kid of a crazy guy, essentially, or not even
Mass murderer.
crazy. Well, no, let's even talk. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion we could have with that Thanos complex piece of it. Or is he actually crazy, or is he just trying to preserve people and making, you know, kind of that horrible choice, like a Sophie's Choice kind of thing? So that's a whole part of this discussion we have to have on this. But it's very believable to me that a child would completely understand a parent's intentions on something and do things completely wrong in order to try to protect a parent. And that was a theme and a storyline I could get on board with and be like, I believe that. I would believe he would jump in front, and because there's degrees of morality for people. And to him, he's almost the worst kind of villain where he feels he's justified in the terribleness that he does. And that's, I don't know, that's so believable to me. That's how so many atrocious crimes happen today, is they truly believe they're doing what's best for everybody and what's best for society. And you can't convince them otherwise, which is why it's not just this crazy person. It's a rational, very strong character, assumably elected governor in this case, doing these crimes. And so then the people are trying to protect them because they're good people otherwise, or in theory, you know, they've got good aspects to their lives or they're good parents or what have you. So that for me, yes, I'm getting past, like I said, the bad filmography, cinematography, all of that. I'm trying to get past that on these and really look at, could I see this being enjoyable in that time? And I 100% could.
This is the first episode to me where I felt like they had hit their stride.
Agreed.
Like
Agreed.
here we are basically halfway through the season, right? We're just about at the halfway point. And again, I honestly didn't look at filming order to see where the stream of things this was actually filmed, but it felt like, okay, now we know what we're doing and we can move forward. And to me, it was a very solid episode and the highest rating I've given an episode since The Naked Time, which is I think the one that we all loved. Right?
Yeah, I do. I think this one didn't have a lot of things that turned me off. It didn't have a lot of the bad dialogue. It
Yep.
didn't have a lot of the really terrible action sequences and unbelievable things. Now, there were some things where it was like, I loved the under the kitchen sink spray bottle. That was solid. That was like,
we still use those.
We got some budget issues going on there. And then the door, I think that's something they haven't yet solidified, that doors and doorknobs have gone away. And they later do that where it's everything's the sliding door, the open and closed door. And I don't know the rationale for that, but I don't
It's
know if any other
futuristic and
series
fun.
they actually have doors anywhere. But overall, I thought it was interesting. I had comments about there's Kirk using his charms again, moving, kind of Miri style, trying to take
But
advantage. But this girl is into it.
yeah,
So
she's swinging
willing
right back with
participant.
all that. Like she is flirting at least as hard, if not harder than he is. And it feels, I mean, they established that she's 19, which is still pretty young in comparison to Kirk.
But so is he. And, like he's not.
Yeah,
I think
but
Kirk's been
it's not.
established as like what 24 or something like that.
No, I think he's older than that.
Is he supposed to be? I don't actually know. I thought he was supposed to be like early or mid to late 20s.
I thought 30s, but that would be an interesting research project to see if we could nail that down. But even then, like it's not the same like creep factor of him and Miri. It was
No.
much more like two consensual adults that were being very flirtatious with each other in a much more consensual manner than an appropriate manner than what we see in the past, right? And I mean that was a lot of the dialogue that I wrote down was kind of around those two and their banter back and forth and just like how equal it was. I mean, him walking into that party and her going, "Is that for me?" The drink is in his hand. He's like, "Why not?" Like it is now. Right.
She knew how to play back, say like swing right back. And I think for me, that was something that I really liked as that played all the way through too, because that at the very end, I think McCoy had the line to him, "You liked her, didn't you? You really liked her." And you could see he wasn't going to respond. Even McCoy said something, "You're not going to respond, are you?" But that's response enough. But he matched with this girl, like on the same level. It wasn't just him being this captain of prestige and cute and sexy or whatever. She had wit as well. And weren't they trading? They were trading lines and they were trading philosophy and things like that as well. So it was more of a deep connection versus just an attraction, which he has with a lot of women. So I think that was something. And actually finding someone who wasn't a part of his crew, or, as much as we give him crap for, hitting on crew members and things like that and people in Starfleet, whatever you call it now. I don't know if it's Starfleet at this point, but he seems to have a problem with women. They have made
reference, but that's not consistent. Even in this episode, they call it Earth Force.
Right. So whatever Starfleet is at this point, I mean, we've kind of made some references to that, but point being, all of a sudden having someone who's in a completely different line of work, a completely different aspect that he doesn't have to worry about that crossover, I think was something for him there. But yeah, it was interesting. And I liked how they did that. I like how they ended it, where it was just like, you know what? I got to go back to being this is my job. I can't care too much about this, even though I did. And you got to see that human aspect of Kirk that wasn't caused by a situational thing on the ship, but by a relationship.
Yeah. I agree with all of it. I thought it was a really great pairing there, even though you definitely see the ending coming and you know what the twist is. I enjoyed the storyline. I think it's funny that obviously this is the 60s and it's before the concept of like DNA testing. So in order to figure out it's Kodos, they have to do voice testing, right? He's got to speak into a speaker, and then they, later they show these two pieces of paper next to each other with the little squiggly lines, and like it's a match, but it's not an exact match, that kind of thing. And just I don't know, some of the one-liners in there, they made me laugh because they were. I mean, even today would be kind of controversial. Like,
they had some racy lines.
Oh, I mean,
I wrote down a few of them where I was like, "What are we talking about right now?"
There's one where they're standing on the ship, and I think it's back when in the part where they're back towards like the shuttle bay, and the lights are dim because they try and match, what time it is back on Earth and all that. And she's commenting about the ship, and she goes, "Surging and throbbing, almost out of control. Are you like that, Captain?" It's like,
Racy.
wow.
That is racy. I wrote that exact thing down too. Overtly sexual. Like she is she's not 19 and innocent.
No.
This girl knows what she wants and she's not afraid to talk about it. Like I wrote that one down too. I was like, holy crap. That's all right. They're just gonna call it. And it was genuine. I feel like that'll be like flirting would work like that.
Oh, for sure.
You know, that's totally something someone would be like, oh, did you set this up for me?
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like that's I feel like their dialogue was much better on this one.
I do too.
Now, in that, was she actually flirting with him, or was she just trying to get him isolated so she could kill him?
But that didn't come until later.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like she liked him.
It didn't come until later, except for the other 7 eyewitnesses who were already dead.
I mean, for sure that she had ulterior motives, right? But I also think there was some interest there.
I'd agree.
Because I mean, she had multiple opportunities where she could have killed him and didn't.
I feel like, and didn't she start going after him once he started asking about her father too? It wasn't like immediately.
I don't remember, but I mean, it had to have effectively been the plan, right? I mean, she knew everyone who could identify her father and was
But she didn't know the Enterprise was going to be there. She thought she went there to kill the other guy.
Yeah, Tom.
You know, he called Kirk there.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily your plans to get Kirk yet.
Yeah. But I don't know. I thought there were some so some of the things I really did enjoy in this episode were a lot of the Spock and McCoy scenes. And the dialogue that they had, I thought was pretty good. Like when Spock says that his father's race was spared the dubious benefits of alcohol, and McCoy says, "I see why you were conquered."
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of funny. And then just in that kind of back and forth, they had some good little jabs at each other. Where Spock said that it was illogical for Kirk to bring the players on board, and McCoy was just like, have you seen her?
Yeah.
And he was just like, yeah, I thought about it, but dismissed it. You would.
Yep.
And the dismissing line that McCoy had at the end, raising his drink, who says, "If you won't join me, don't disapprove, at least not until you've tried
I like that one.
The one
I thought that was pretty good, and those interactions I thought were good. I thought they had some good, like, exposition coming in, explaining what the background was of the story. I liked how they brought that in by Spock and McCoy discussing the threat to Kirk that he was or was not realizing in the moment, and basically filling the viewers in on that background of what actually happened, that this guy was so bad. If it was him. But yeah, and then the interesting reveal at the end of one of their conversations that the Caridian company of players was near wherever any of those eyewitnesses were when they died. I did think that was interesting. It was a good way of like storytelling to fill in those gaps that were very prevalent. And it was a very interesting way of telling the story, of just kind of diving into it and knowing there's all that background, but then filling it in that way. I did enjoy that. So I know sometimes you can get stuck on some of the, we'll say, the lamer aspects of how they film it, things they say, and this one I thought had a fair number of those elements to it. Like when they went to double red alert.
I did write that down too.
And he was like, double red alert, and then
double super secret probation.
Right. And then there was the overloading phaser that could blow up the entire deck and kill everybody around there.
That he
yet
put
he
down
could
the
throw it
garbage
down a
chute.
trash chute
Yeah, I wrote that down.
with zero ramifications.
Now, maybe the trash chutes have like force fields
Well-
around them and it shoots them out into space. There's got to be a logic there.
So
Maybe,
if
but it
if you
still
pause-
shook the entire ship.
That's
So
because it was
if you-
outside and it was nearby the deflector shields. They're on double red alert.
if
Yeah.
you pause and look at it, it says it's the pressure vent, which tells me it's something that leads outside of the ship. I don't.
With
I
the
don't know
garbage
if there's
chute,
any-
no breath.
yeah, if there's any explanation for that, and logistically, I
Yeah.
don't know how that would work. But assuming that's
I
the
just thought that
case-
was interesting, that and awfully convenient to have just this chute right outside your office in case you need to just get rid of something. But still, when it exploded, sounded like it had hit something and was well, I mean, it shook the entire deck, so you would think it would have torn a hole in something.
That's consistent though with Star Trek though, where like they
Yeah.
get something off the ship and it blows up close to the shield and the whole ship rocks. And
Yeah.
nothing on the ship is destroyed. So that's actually something maybe Nate and I are used to. Like if you get it, you can be shook
I
by
didn't-
it, but not actually damaged by it.
I didn't find it surprising. I thought that was one of those things like, oh yeah, that's the stereotype that I think some people have of the way things can go in Star Trek. I thought it was interesting that all of a sudden the ship has a fully functioning theater in it.
A lot of them do though. It's a massive ship. You've got
Yeah,
how many people on this ship we decided?
there's
2,000
only like
people?
400 though.
400. But you gotta have entertainment for these people. We don't have holodecks yet.
Yeah.
No.
So-
They have a bowling alley.
I mean,
I don't know. I find it interesting though, the things they cram into the ship, and there really hasn't been much discussion to this point of how big the ship actually is. You
Mhm.
see the same hallway whenever they're showing a hallway scene, no matter what deck they're on. You've seen a few different rooms in engineering, the transporter room, the bridge, quarters, medical, whatever. But there hasn't really been much to that. So it's one of those things that's it's kind of like, oh, there's a like fully functioning theater. I wonder if that'll come up again. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. I have no idea.
that
but
is super interesting that that's you.
it
Because
was-
I'm sure
it
Nate
doesn't
and I are
bother
just
me.
like, whatever.
It doesn't
It's
bother
normal.
me. It's just something that I look at and it's like, okay, I'll note that's just
I think there's
interesting.
I think there's a tendency sometimes, and I'm not saying you're doing this right now, but when I've talked to people in the past, there's a tendency to think of these ships as more of a traditional military vessel, like what you would see today on like an aircraft carrier or a submarine and things like that, where there aren't a ton of creature comforts. And I think that's one of the things that they've tried to not do in Star Trek, like show that you are, this is different than a military vessel. You are living in space. You have to have things to do because you're on these 5-year missions. And if you don't have some, availability of recreational facilities, your entire crew is going to go nuts.
That's fair.
So
Yeah, and that's fair. And also to this point, I think we talked about it a week or two ago, was that they really haven't defined what they're exactly doing. Are they diplomatic? Are they military? Are they police? They've been kind of anything and everything to this point, which is fine. I know that gets quite a bit more defined in the next episode.
sure does.
But yeah, that's interesting, and that's also interesting to hear from you two, the way that this type of thing comes up time and again, where I'm 14 episodes in and it's kind of like, okay, now there's a theater. That's odd. But yeah, at the same time, it makes sense. And then again, granted, we're going on a cruise, and cruise ships have theaters in them, like full theaters in them. But this doesn't feel like it's a weekend cruise ship. So maybe that's why it was kind of like, okay, there's all of this command structure and hierarchy, and they have 400 some people. They're probably down to upper threes now with all the people that have died over these episodes, unless they're constantly getting replenished. But I mean,
fair.
they also don't talk about that at all. There's just some throwaway line of 400, was it like 428
Yeah.
people or something, and that was a higher number than they mentioned in The Cage, which was 13 years earlier, so different time, I guess.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess I might, after hearing you guys talk and thinking back on the episode, I didn't dislike it. It just, at least on an initial viewing, was just kind of underwhelming. But I can see all of those things that you're talking about, and I'm close to saying I could bump it up to a 6 and say it was a good episode. Or 6 was what? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Abby, what was your final score on that? I know you liked it, but what would you give that?
Well, my scoring is thumbs up, hand level, and thumbs
No,
down.
we
so
got
she gave it a,
systems.
so she liked it, so she's giving it a thumbs up, and we're going to translate that into a 10.
It's as close as I think I've come other than the one after this. So I'm going to say 8, remembering that I gave 8s to some really bad episodes to begin with, just because I had really, really bad expectations on some of those earlier episodes. And so if they didn't like completely drive me nuts, I ranked them really high because I like to give high scores to people. Yes, you want me to give your surveys. So on this one, I actually genuinely did think it was an 8. It is rewatchable. As someone who likes Star Trek, I would watch it, even though I don't particularly appreciate this series. If this is something where it's like, hey, pick an episode to watch out of this, would I pick this one? Yes. Would I recommend this one as a good one to watch for someone who's never seen this, original series? Again, yes. Is it my best one? Absolutely not. I don't think it's the best one, but I think it's watchable far more than any of the other ones. And I think there were enough. Episode. It was a solid episode. It stayed true to the themes of Star Trek, all of that, and it was good. I appreciate it. I'll give it an 8, maybe even 8.5. I really did like it.
Are we gonna stick with 8.5, or I mean, I'll put in whatever, but
I don't know. I want all of my previous scores to be 5s. All those ones from the first 3 weeks.
You're allowed to revise. Aaron and I both did.
All right,
so.
yeah, I'll bump this one up to a 6. I'm sold that it's better than just mediocre.
Now it's here's my beef with it though. So we haven't talked about the piece that Aaron appreciates, and they didn't talk about this in the episode at all, and the ethics behind what he did. And what the governor did. Aaron likes these big ethical debates. I mean, he reads these theologians, he reads the Stoics. That's what Aaron reads for fun. So,
we're going to call him out for that, or he just
when there's nothing that's like substantial and philosophical to discuss, he doesn't like the episodes, or he doesn't appreciate them as much as you and I. And that's what we've been discovering. Yep. So the ones that have those deep theological debates or philosophical debates are the ones he really sinks his teeth into and really loves. So in this one, I think the issue is they touched on it. The Thanos complex.
It was very, I noticed that they touched on it, but then it was just a very brief thing where, I mean, there was some discussion of, was he just this ruthless murderer, or was there something to be noted that none of the people who died suffered? So was he trying to show them mercy instead of them dying this long, painful death? Take that as you will, good or bad.
And saving other people.
And clearly some people viewed that as very, very bad. But then they just kind of glossed over it and
but the other challenge that they raised was that he seemed to
delight in it.
Delighted it, but also he was a fan of eugenics. And so he seemed to decide who is going to live and who is going to die based on whether he thought whatever criteria should live or die, right? Whatever.
And arguably that obviously is the trouble on it. But there's something to be said about the Sophie's Choice aspect of it, where it's like, hey, if they were all going to starve.
Were they though?
Well, that's what he said. He actually said that in the thing. He's like, we had no idea supplies were coming. Would you rather everyone have suffered? And that's what he said when he was countered by Kirk. He said, we didn't know when the ships were going to arrive. They arrived sooner than we were told, I think is the actual script line, and I can look it up. But he says right on there, like, they weren't expected to get relief. So
the philosophical debate is, that's obviously not dived into deeply in this episode, but that, we can have is, when is it okay to decide that even painlessly you're going to wipe out half the population?
When do you decide that it's half is better than all? I mean,
It's
the
an
same, like,
interesting debate, right?
it's the Thanos debate, right? Like there's a whole 2 movies about it in another thing, but it's that same concept of, I'm not saying I do it, but you kind of get it sometimes. Like if he's sitting there in a palace or if he's sitting there in a governor's office and he's seeing a bunch of people suffering, everyone's going to suffer, everyone will die. It's kind of like that whole, let's put it in Star Trek terms, everyone's in an airlock. And there's so many storylines where it's like, do you kill yourself with a phaser so the other person has more air for longer and has a chance to survive until help comes?
But that's self-sacrifice, and that's
I
different.
get that. I get that.
It would
So
be a different story, I think, if he went to the population and said, "Look, I have a way to solve this, or at least
agreed. Absolutely. He didn't do it.
I
I'm
want
just saying, were
volunteers."
intentions correct or was he evil?
Yeah, it's the
Like
whole
misinformed.
women and children first into the lifeboats kind of thing, right? That,
Right.
from what we can tell, that was never part of the discussion. Maybe it was. They don't talk about it, but yeah, I don't know. I struggle with that being the solution. I get why some people might take it as the solution. I don't think it's a decision that I would have made in that situation.
Oh goodness, no. I'm not saying it was the right solution at all, but he wasn't born in the pits. He wasn't born with malice in his heart, deciding to murder people and just waited for the opportunity.
As far as we know.
I mean, I think that was established in the character. Like he's lived the rest of his life in remorse for it, thinking he still made the right decision, but upset that that was the decision he had to make.
Yeah,
at least that was the take I got. I mean, the man's portraying Macbeth. What's the storyline of Macbeth? Like demons his entire life. Macbeth is, chased by his own demons and like goes crazy. So, I mean, even in itself, the storyline that he is acting out, I mean, he's voicing his own demons the entire time.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but I agree. And some of the notes I made at the end was, not only is this kind of Shakespearean, but it's almost like a Greek tragedy at the same time of, he ends up, and in the end, sacrificing himself, right? As Lenore, goes to make what's effectively her final move, he's the one that steps out in front and stops it. He's the one that says, you are the one thing in my life untouched by what I had done.
Right. You're the one thing without evil.
Yep. And so, how that kind of came full circle for him, and how he was trying to keep her away from that, right? That she wouldn't be weighed down by
the grief of his decisions.
Yeah, the sins of his past, right? And ultimately that failed. And so I did, from that perspective, really like the ending to that, because they could have done a few different things and tied it up really nicely, but I think that was probably the best way they could have ended it, of like that moment of a little bit of redemption.
Well, there was the redemption, but he was also very upset that the one person who had been untainted by the things that he had done, that he knows were terrible things, has been brought down to a horrible level with the things that she's done, and is justifying to herself. And so he, I think, just, you were the one thing in my life untouched by what I had done, and seemed destroyed by that.
Yep.
I did like, I think again, where I see some weakness in this episode is that they're not just that things are left kind of loose, but I mean, in the end, she tries to kill Kirk. She grabs a phaser and shoots at him and doesn't kill him because of her father's sacrifice. And the resolution to that is essentially McCoy telling Kirk that she'll receive the best of care. She remembers nothing and thinks her father's still alive giving performances before cheering crowds.
Yeah, she crazy.
What the hell?
She had a
I
breakdown.
mean,
Crazy.
She
did
literally
she just had a breakdown and they're gonna just take care of her? Is that it? Or like
Yes.
I
said,
read
What
oh,
would you
that
like
as-
them
did they
to do
do
to her?
something to her memory? She's getting kind of a pass here. What's
No,
She's
I-
literally
what's going
murdering people
on?
for her father, and now her father's dead. She
I-
went crazy. She snapped.
I literally wrote this down as a question of did she have a breakdown? But I think that's literally what happened. She had a breakdown and now she's in whatever their equivalent of a mental hospital is.
That's what I took it as.
Again, they don't say that directly, but
They
that's
sent
how
her to Talos 4 so she can have her illusion while everyone else has their reality.
Right. She's hanging
no,
out with
I went
Clay
to that. I went to the one with the with the mind wiping.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that place.
We brought her
Dagger
there,
of the mind.
and
Yep.
she got her brain wiped, so now she doesn't remember.
I also thought it was interesting too. I'm pretty sure this is the case, but naming her Lenore has to be an Edgar Allan Poe reference. I mean, it's a very literary family with the Shakespearean stuff and all that. I just, quote the Raven nevermore. I don't know if that's true or not, but Lenore is just not a name that you hear very often.
Was it popular in the 60s though? I don't know. I'm actually asking.
I have no idea. It just seemed to fit.
What do you know?
I know nothing, Jon Snow. I do, on some level, I did make this note and I forgot about it until just now. I do wish, in a lot of ways, that the episode had ended as she's kind of over her father and he's dead. And she does this, the plays the thing wherein we'll capture the conscience of the king. Back to the episode. I do sort of wish that that's where they ended it. I don't think they really. I know they like to end the episodes on the bridge with some like additional thoughtful dialogue between Kirk and one or more of the others. But they also didn't open this like a traditional episode. So I kind of feel like they could have
missed opportunity to bookend it
right there, and I would have been okay with that. More happy.
Yeah, I think that would have been a better ending, leaving a bit more ambiguous what happened to her afterwards, and that I think would have been fine. I think, yeah, what they did was just kind of, I don't know. Again, goes back to how I just felt the episode was largely somewhere between mediocre and okay. I just felt like there were a lot of shortcomings in the episode, but it wasn't bad. It was just kind of okay.
Yeah.
But I did bump my score up to 6 because I was told that it was better than I thought.
So these are my like notes that we haven't brought up yet. Why are we eating in the engine room? Why is working in the engine room?
Drinking milk in the engine room?
Why is the engine room a demotion?
Yep. From communication.
For communication. Yep, that's weird. I also was just like, wow, that hum is so loud that you can't find it. What? Like, that was weird. I also wrote the garbage thing. And then I also noticed something that apparently they have not, they no longer adhere to HIPAA in
they never have
100 years from now, because McCoy just middle of the sickbay just sits there giving off his stuff, just like, this person's crazy. If he ever finds out, looks over both shoulders, then he'll go and kill him. It's like, dude, maybe like not give your log loudly, like where the other guy can hear you from the other room. And then when he tells Kirk about it, he's just like, yeah, he might have walked in on me. That'd be kind of tragic, but hey, I had to do my log, right? Seriously? So I thought that was like okay, I get it. You had to like meet the storyline meet up and stuff like that, but
I also
it was a little interesting.
I also thought first they were using Riley as bait, and that's why they moved him to the engine room. And no, they were just dumb. Like, it was Kirk's stupid way of protecting him. We're going to leave him alone in engineering. That's how we're going
to demote him and like make him feel like he did something wrong.
And not tell him why. Don't say anything. Just send him there. It's the captain's prerogative. And I honestly thought that was part of some grand plan to bait the killer out of hiding to catch them in the act. And no, we're gonna stick them over there. That I think that was my major problem with the episode. Like, if I'm gonna pick one thing that's like that was a stupid decision, it's that one. Other than that, I still liked it. Like, it doesn't take away my enjoyment of the episode whatsoever. I was shockingly happy with this episode. And we didn't even get through all the one-liners that were in there. I mean, Spock goes, that's eight light years off course. And Kirk just kicks right back with, if my memory needs refreshing, I'll ask you for it.
So yeah, being 8 light years off course. I mean, Kirk said at one point, "You called me 3 light years off course." I think it's still, they seem to still be finding their way and kind of like this. I explaining like how travel works in these distances. And then thinking it's like, okay, 3 light years off course. I mean, okay, is that like 2 days out of your way or what? And 3 light years isn't even here to the closest star. So it's like, how far off course was this?
Yep.
So it's, yeah, just kind of, it feels sometimes like the writers are still at this point like, let's throw space sounding words in there or science sounding words and just call it good.
I don't
which
think
probably
they had...
was good at the time. And they probably just said like, oh, this sounds, and nobody will question it. And I would imagine nobody did.
Nope.
And that we have that luxury of having so much detail in so many of the things that we watch or read or listen to that we probably wouldn't have if not for this show that we're watching.
Mhm.
So I just find that interesting too, because it's like they just throw numbers and distances and whatever out there, and it's just like it just is. Yeah.
I don't
So
think they
answering
had the
some of our
luxury.
questions. Sorry.
I don't think they have the luxury of like science consultants and things like that on the show, right?
They surely didn't.
Like today, you go get people that like are experts in, they kind of fact check and validate and try and make things
Give them the
as
dialogue.
accurate as they can.
You get somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson who bitched at the people who made Titanic enough, so they went back and redid the sky because the stars weren't right.
Yep. I mean,
so we learned some good trivia on this one, guys. Here we go.
Okay.
So our comments about what happened to Lenore was covered. Actually, they filmed the scene where she literally was having a mental breakdown in sick bay.
Aha.
Cut from the scenes.
Okay.
So that was originally something that they fully addressed and filmed, that she was just crazy and that she just lost her mind after killing him. This is actually the first time that they had more than just stunning kill settings on a phaser as well. And they had to deliberately do that so his body wouldn't vaporize when you shot him. Because historically, kill setting would vaporize.
Yep.
So this is where we got our just maim greatly. Maybe they die setting.
He's an old man, so it was enough.
Give an old dude a heart attack setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, give an old dude a heart attack setting. And then there's what was the other one? Oh, this had one of the lowest ratings when it was released.
Wow.
In the 60s. And here's why. They actually said why. So it's because essentially it didn't have enough. Oh, here we go. Episode is among the lowest ratings for the first season, mainly due to the fact that it was too talky, no action scenes, no monsters or sci-fi gimmicks. And so it was one of the ones they never rebroadcast. So all the things that bother you and me, Nate, all the craziness, all of this like blah, 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 and all the stuff that we're like, these episodes are terrible. Why do they do so many of them? That's what they were asking for in the 60s. They want the dog. They want the dog wearing the horn. That's what they wanted.
I mean, it was a different time, right?
Okay. They wanted Kirk taking his shirt off and doing somersaults for no reason around tables awkwardly.
the only guy shirtless.
Yeah. That's what they wanted. So it's kind of interesting that they tried to go a more philosophical route. I mean, Aaron probably doesn't think so on this one. I thought this was a very philosophical episode, but yeah, they tried to go that way on it and they were like, no. So
fun time. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was good. It does. So now that I think that segues into the next one really nicely, because the next one certainly checks all those boxes for the people that wanted more action and more aliens and I guess a little less talky dialogue. There's more going on.
A little bit.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. Is there anything we wanted to cover on this one before we moved on, or final thoughts from the bald guy on the To Boldly Go podcast?
No, I think we kind of covered it. Yeah, I would be interested after this discussion to go back and rewatch it and see what it was that I kind of didn't appreciate the first time around. Like I said, you guys told me that it's better than my initial thoughts were, but
Yep.
yeah, I still just I don't know. Maybe it's something that ages well. But as an initial watch, it didn't seem to fit any of the other episodes we've watched.
Yeah, I think it is
So it
different than
seemed
a lot of
very
those
different.
episodes. Yeah.
And yeah, just overall left with kind of a feeling of, no, okay.
I
But I would be interested to go back and revisit it at some point and see if that opinion changes, especially if you say that's something that comes up throughout the other series and some of that. And again, it's still clear. It seems clear at this point that they're still figuring out what they are, what they're doing. Like
but I still
you
maintain.
said you think this is the first episode where they really hit their stride.
Yeah.
And I feel from what I've seen, this seems completely different than anything else. But at the same time, they're still figuring out what they're doing, and they're setting up all these pieces that they're setting up all these pieces so they can do so many things moving forward, which
In
sounds like they do.
Traditionally, the first season of every Star Trek show is just rocky.
Yeah.
There's just so much that they're trying to kind of figure out and get going.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things come together. And I didn't expect to see an episode that was quite as cohesive as this one at this point in the season. Now, granted, we still have The Naked Time, which we all still like even better than Conscious of the King, and that was very early in the show.
Yeah.
But after that, it was more of a crapshoot from that point forward. Like that was almost a fluke in a lot of ways.
What was the filming order again?
I don't know.
Because I'd be curious to know if that plays a part on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But it had action though. Had action, so that might be enough of a spur on that got the positive that it needed.
Yeah. The other thing that I noted that I think it's worth mentioning, especially as we get into Balance of Terror, is we do have our I'm going to start calling it the Yeoman Random sighting.
So
she's
random.
in it. She shows up. She has zero dialogue in the episode, but she gets off the turbo lift and
she has dialogue.
Not
everything's all done. They said they'll trust you with whatever you decide to do, Captain. Thanks, Yeoman.
That's Balance of Terror.
Is that Balance of Terror? We were still talking the Shakespeare episode.
No, Conscious of the King. She's in the episode. She comes off the turbo lift on the bridge and goes to one of the stations behind there, but she never says anything. She's just there. And then yes, you get into Balance of Terror and she's there and she has one throwaway line at the very end that.
But we also knew at this time they're in the process of writing her off because of the conflict and the controversy. So
that's why I bring it up.
That tracks.
Because you can kind of see that phasing out of her character.
And then, like she said, happened. She, I think she claimed that in her memoir that's what they were doing to her.
Yep. So anyway, that's all I had to say about Conscious of the King.
Yeah. All right, now we're on to the lesser of the episodes we watched this week, Balance of Terror.
The lesser of the two, not the Imperials.
Nate's gonna quit.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just gonna like
no,
rage.
I thought this episode is great. Yeah, it was this episode I think this is the one where I would say it seems like they really hit their stride. And
This is where I
this is
expected
I
them to
think
hit their stride.
what people think of when they think Star Trek. They think something they think somewhere between this and like Where No Man Has Gone Before, where it's the planet sets and all that. But yeah, I thought this episode was great. I thought it just kind of it hit like everything. So very clearly a military vessel.
Yep.
And they set up a bunch of background and like common knowledge to the characters that has never been mentioned to anybody in the series previously, with unless I've missed stuff, which is entirely possible, but talking about a war a century earlier, and funny them talking about primitive weapons, primitive space weapons.
Yep.
The primitive nuclear weapons is basically what they were saying. So fitting for the 1960s.
Very.
But yeah, I thought it was it was a great episode. They had a lot of world building in there with and setting up, I think, potential future conflicts as well. Because this doesn't seem to be an isolated thing. Clearly. Yeah. So what I'm assuming both of you really enjoyed this episode, which is one that I will say I felt that we would all enjoy this one after watching it. So Nate, what's your rating on it?
I gave it another 8.
Abby?
Or Abby?
I gave it a 2. Just kidding. I'll give it another 8.5. I actually think I liked it better than the last one, but in different ways. So maybe the same. So I'll do 8.5 again.
Okay.
I actually did not take notes whilst watching this one because I was entertained enough to just watch. I'm like, I'm just gonna watch this as I'm gonna watch it because this was entertaining. I remember thinking, wow, they brought Romulans in super early and they made them look like Vulcans super dang early. I did not know that they started that. I mean, you watch some of the episodes of like early Klingons, it's like, that's funny. That's not a Klingon.
Yeah.
And so, they really started the world building with Romulans right away and they stuck with it. And I love that.
Yeah. I mean, and then what they do with the show or, with the scenes on the bridge when they see the Romulans and now they're looking at Spock and Spock is
positively, are you sure who your mama is your mama?
Perplexed, right? And then I mean the utter chaos that basically ensues on the bridge, and Kirk having to reel Styles back in and like, guys, we can't deal with this right now. Like, we've got a job to do.
Well, and talk about disrespect on it. Like, we're talking about a military ship now, like Aaron just said, right? We're following military proceedings. I'm sorry, why are you letting your person talk off like that to your science officer? Like, seriously?
Well, but he does put a stop to it. He does say
he's something about racism or something like that, or
so leave your bigotry in your quarters.
There's no room for it on the bridge.
Yeah.
And even before they're talking about the Romulan War, and he and Styles kind of goes down a rabbit hole, and Kirk calls him out on that and says, "Their war, Mr. Styles, not ours. Don't forget it."
Yeah.
Right.
The past is in the past.
And I found, so I also gave this one an 8, though I thought at the end I could if there was stuff I didn't quite get, I could see this one being only a 7. I could also see it being a 9. So yeah, I settle with 8. I thought it was a great episode. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they talked about that previous war a century earlier and how Kirk said, yeah, it was their war, not ours, and the primitive atomic weapons. But they also noted that no human had ever seen a Romulan, so they were all shocked by the appearance because nobody had ever seen one before with the way they fought previously. I thought it was interesting to see where the importance of the Enterprise and following orders, where that lies.
Yep.
Because Kirk basically said, we're expendable if we need to be,
Mhm.
because the sanctity of that neutral zone is greater than us.
Yep.
And we're not going to be responsible for beginning a galactic war. Um, so I thought it was very interesting world building, showing that history, that there is a big history of conflict. Didn't go too much into like the origin of the conflict, but just knowing that history is there, having this neutral zone between Earth outposts and the Romulan Empire or Romulan Star Empire. Um, I yeah, it was all stuff that I thought they were able to get a lot of exposition into the episode and explaining some of these things, a lot of action. Maybe I missed it, but I don't know what the Romulan um like rationale was for attacking these Earth outposts. If that was something that had maybe been ongoing and they'd been doing all this and then finally got caught, or what it was, like why now? Um, I
I
didn't
don't think
quite
they
pick up on
clearly.
that, or if it was just like, who cares? This is just
Romulans like
what's
to pick
happening.
fights.
Yeah, I think it was a show of strength. I think they don't really say it, say
Like an
why,
honor thing almost.
but you can hear them talking about, how they want to, make their praetor back home proud, and you can
Mm,
assume that's a leader of some kind,
yeah.
and how they weren't, you know, they weren't expected to come back alive necessarily, and all these different things. I do like, because I had forgotten. We all know who the Romulans are supposed to be an allegory of, right? I mean, it's pretty well established in this episode. No, nothing.
I would say maybe the Romans.
No, they're the
No?
Russians.
Oh,
This is a Cold War. So
gotcha. Yep.
the,
That
the
makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
and that is who they modeled the Romulans after. And I had forgotten about it until we got into the episode. And some of the dialogue, like there's one line in there where they say weakness is something we dare not show. And that was a very big theme of the Cold War, right? Is the nuclear arms race, the space race, all these things to show indirectly who's the stronger empire. Is it the US or is it the USSR? Right. And so you pick that up throughout the episode of there's like, we can't underestimate them. It's a very adversarial relationship, but there's also like this mutual respect between the two of them, and how you know they've had conflicts in the past, and now it's this, we haven't heard from them, we don't see them, but we know they're out there. um that kind of thing. Just very, very Cold War, very Russian,
Yeah.
Russian vibes.
And
Makes sense. I didn't
fitting
think
for the
about it, but yeah.
times.
Yeah, I mean, it fits right in with the political landscape,
Yeah.
the world at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we're in the midst of the space race, right? We're talking right before they put Neil Armstrong on the moon, and the US pretty definitively wins that, after loss after loss after loss in every other milestone of the space race. right?
Yeah.
So, and I think, maybe that's why the Romulans also look like the Vulcans, to kind of tie that back a little bit. I mean, I think it'd be different if they looked more human. Now I'm kind of making things up as I go, but
You look like your enemy.
yeah.
And even so, like by contrast, the Vulcans are the most logical, the most peace giving,
Yep.
not anything that could ever even try to cause war or problems in their opinions at this point. So that does kind of solidify that whole concept. Like, wow, we can look just like someone who's polar opposite of us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think they kind of allude to the Romulans possibly being an offshoot of the Vulcans, and that the Vulcans weren't always what they are at this point in time, and that they were a different, they had that fight in them previously that stayed with whatever turned into the Romulans. That fight was there at one point. I mean, I thought it was interesting then that even Spock was like, yeah, attack them. Like,
Yeah.
go kill
Like
them.
at some point, that's the logical answer, right?
Yeah.
Well, he was
And
just like, if they're like we were,
basically
then
saying
yeah,
basically that if they are what we used to be, get rid of them.
y'all screwed.
Because that the alternative is way worse.
And the reality is, as we learn, as they develop more of the Star Trek universe in, future episodes, future shows, things like that, they are like the Romulans are
The same
Vulcans.
species.
Yeah, it is a faction of Vulcan where, when they made that big
They're like
to,
genetically identical, aren't they?
yeah, they are the descendants of Vulcan. They're the group that didn't want to, rid themselves of emotion and follow the path of logic, and they decided to pack up their shit and leave, and nobody heard from them again, and that became the Romulan Empire. Like they build that out in later episodes, and they allude to it pretty strongly here. Like Spock is clearly surprised at what he sees, and then there must be some history lesson from when he was younger that he starts to think about, like, there was a thing. Maybe it's them. We don't know. We've never seen them before.
Right.
So,
no, I liked it. The reveal was good for everybody. It was just one of those like,
now
maybe.
My only problem with the reveal was, so they can magically just hack into a Romulan ship and see the bridge. Like, we're just gonna click some
but they did say that the Romulans were using all of their power to shield. So perhaps other systems weren't as secure.
Sure. It just, I get it as a plot vehicle. I think it would have been maybe more impactful if there was an actual like communication early on between the two ships, where there were words as a show of demonstration of power, and they were taken aback by what they saw. And
easily like open the channels of communication or something.
I think that's a more effective plot device than what they picked.
The Romulans needed the Baylock puppet.
Yes, exactly. Should have stolen it from Ron Howard's little brother.
A couple things I found interesting in this episode is for how hot-headed Kirk can be sometimes, he is very hesitant to engage. He also wasn't hiding from a fight, but he was very slow to engage, very deliberative, which is interesting for somebody who can be so reactionary. I thought
I don't think he's reactionary.
Noteworthy.
I do not think he's reactionary in situations. He's reactionary with his people on his bridge because he's comfortable with them. When it comes to scenarios, he takes a time. He takes a breath.
Yeah. I agree. I think he definitely, his challenge is person to person, not situational.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think this did give him an excellent, I agree. This gave him an excellent way to show why he's captain. He can think down the way. He's got strategy. He's got, chess moves in his brain and things like that. He's not just, like this gave him the opportunity to really show, no, I was hired for this job for a reason. I got to think 3 steps ahead of this guy and make sure I'm not starting a galactic war.
Yep.
So I think we've seen a little bit of it before with like the bluffing on whatever 2 episodes ago, I think. So we've seen it a little bit where he's really starting to kind of like, let me show you why I have this job.
Yep.
But I think for this one, I agree. It's one where we definitely got a lot more of the, all right, that's why they hired him.
Couple other things I found a bit interesting in this one, and this goes into some of the like bits of trivia I've seen when just looking up generic information on some things, is in a lot of these episodes and apparently series, there's almost no reference to religion. It's just not a thing that's super acknowledged in this. I think it's that maybe Gene Roddenberry wanted to get beyond religion, beyond any of that, but there's very little mention. I mean, there are, we'll say, relational interactions between people, but there's also not ceremony related to marriage or anything like that. And this episode started with a wedding, which I think seems it's interesting because as I said, in just seeing and reading a few things, that is something that is not common in the Star Trek realm. And I found that just interesting. And then I do wonder at the end of the story if, like, if it really added anything to the story other than making you sad at the end when the one person who died was the groom.
I think it drove the point home of the the risks that you take when you're in when you take on those roles, when you join an organization like Starfleet or Earth Force or whatever we want to call it at this point in the show. And certainly the attempted wedding at the beginning was a plot device to add a down moment at the end. The episode ended on a very, very sad note overall, right?
But she even said, I understand. So
Sure,
it's one of those things that this was a purely, like you said, military. Oh God, I can't say that word. What is it? This is the name of this episode. Militaristic episode where we have weddings, we live our lives on this ship, but at the end of the day, we have a duty and we serve our duty and we understand that these are the risks we take when we do this.
And I know what she said at the end of the episode, but I think, in the way she delivered that line, there's a big difference in what she said and what she meant, because Kirk says it never makes any sense. We both have to know that there was a reason. And her response was, I'm all right. She was not all right. Like, she very clearly was not all right. But what else are you going to say? Like, she hasn't even had half a second to grieve the loss of the love of her life.
Right.
It had just happened. And so, I mean, if you think about it from the perspective of someone has just gone through, number one, all of their lives were in danger for a significant period of time. And then she's now gone through a pretty massive trauma. She's in shock. That hasn't hit her yet. That will hit her, but we'll never see it. Like, all of that will happen off camera, as it were.
Yeah. No, I found it just interesting, though, that there were some references to things in this episode that have not come up previously, and it's almost treated like they're just not given any treatment, which is interesting. Well, just like religion, ceremony like that. Although they do reference at the end, McCoy says that his fiance was at the chapel, so there's a chapel on the Enterprise. Sure. So, and again, this is going to some of the things that I read where they say that, yeah, there are minimal references to marriage
And there
and
are.
relationships like that. So I find that interesting that that came up. And then if you think back on the episodes that we've watched, the references to religion or God or anything have been minimal. There was a reference to a Christmas party, and Baylock basically said, like, you probably have some belief in some deity, so we're going to give you 10 minutes. And that's about all the references there have been to that.
Well, and I'll even point out that the marriage ceremony that they were attempting to have at the beginning of the episode really had no indication of being like a Christian wedding
Yeah.
ceremony. It was more of a maritime
Yeah.
wedding ceremony.
Accurate.
Yeah.
You know, in the tradition of maritime law, the captain of the ship
Going back to wooden ships.
has the honor and the privilege of marrying two people. Like there's no discussion of any kind of religion there. There's no religious icons that are present. Even if they do call it a chapel, it isn't clearly displayed for any given, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, like name, like there isn't any clear clear, you know what I mean?
Militaristic iconic is our theme episode name.
No, what's the word? Damn it, Aaron, isn't your degree
visual authentication?
Yeah, but isn't your degree in biblical studies like what's the it's like iconography or something like that. What
iconography?
Maybe that's what it is. There. Iconography.
He's using that theology degree in his IT work.
And a Star Trek podcast. Come on.
No judgment.
Clearly, that's what we paid for private college for you.
Hey, I have an electrical engineering degree that I have literally never used. So you're not going to get any judgment from me on any of that. So
no, I just I think it's interesting that was though that ceremony just in general, that relationship was a prominent point, even if it wasn't the focal point of the episode. It was very prominent. I mean, that's how it's how it started, it's how it ended. And
it's how they hit it in the middle, because they're in weapons control and they're getting the phasers ready to fire on the ship, and she's working, and he comes up to her and makes the reference of like, and at least for today, I'm still your boss, right? Is it, once they finally get married, she's going to wear the pants and tell him what to do. Like she makes that really offhand, or he makes a really offhand comment in there. So it comes up like 3 times in the episode. So they were clearly trying to build some kind of an emotional connection there beyond everything else.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, my opinion is I feel like on some level they did succeed.
I agree.
I don't think it was a complete failure.
No, I didn't think it was a failure either. I don't think, had they taken that out of the episode, I don't think the episode would have like lost much.
No, I agreed.
But
I don't know. I mean, I think there's so much more than just like this militaristic thing though to it. These people have to go on with their lives. And this was a snapshot into, okay, they just had this conflict. Now they're going to go forward, and we're just going to keep exploring, and we're going to continue to take that risk. If there's no personal risk and there's no emotions involved, why do we care?
Mm-hmm.
That's what creates the aspect of caring. Otherwise, it's just a computer droning around. We don't really give two rats. It's those connections that we have to make, whether that's in war or in love or what have you. And it's the tragedies like that are what drive you on, because it shows there's a purpose. He even says in his line, it has to matter. It matters. Or there's a reason, I think is the line. And it's like, we
both have to know that there was a reason.
We both have to know there was a reason, and that, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's a reason why we signed up for this. There's a reason why we put our lives at stake every single day. We may go to plays. We may have bowling alleys and things like that to try to make it less terrible sometimes, but we got to be up and ready to go to double red alert at any given time, where we might just randomly die just because we may. And we all might, at this point, I'm pretty sure everyone on that ship is just happy that they all have died at some point. The ship hasn't gotten blown up. because
Sure.
it's a risk so many times that they seem
It,
to narrowly escape. And they're
it
escaping it because of the skills of one person who's outwitting others. And that's so huge there. I
it
mean,
they definitely want to convey the idea that even with as advanced as they are, the idea of space exploration is still a very risky proposition.
absolutely.
It's not
And
all
that's
sunshine and butterflies, right?
no, it's a risk every single day, but it's the risk is worth it. And I think that again speaks to what you're talking about with, you know, what's happening in society at that time. You know, like you said, we're in the middle of the space race and everything like that. So it's like there's a little bit of that, I'm sure, commentary happening where it's like, hey, yeah, it is worth it for us to continue to do this and to spend money on this. You know, it's a risk, but we have to take those risks. But I do think that sorry, that's too loud. Yeah, I don't know. I think that relationship piece was key to it for me. I also got super confused at first because I thought Scotty was getting married. I was like, how did I never know Scotty was married?
Right.
And then I realized, no, he's just walking her down the aisle.
Yep. And I think, I mean, not to play off the title of the episode too much, I think it gives it balance, right? You put in all these different pieces to the episode, and it makes it something that is much more well-rounded, much more well-balanced than simply a battle between two ships, right? In an unknown alien force. Like, you build a humanistic story behind it, and you give it real stakes.
I think,
That
especially in an episode where we are very military. Oh God, I can't say that word still,
militaristic,
guys.
yeah,
Militaristic. Um, Other episodes we have been other reasons. We've been explorers, we've been scientists and things like that. This one we are military. And so unlike the military though, we're not isolated from each other. We're
yep.
not just unthinking, unfeeling. We are so much more. We're a living, breathing organism. And that ship and the interactions between them is part of that organism. So it's just, I think it was a crucial piece.
I still go back. It was such a great episode, and I knew going into it that it was a great episode. Like, I remember this episode, and for me, like I said, I went into Conscious of the King with I just want to get through this so I can get to Balance of Terror, because I knew I was going to enjoy that one. And what I got was, basically in a single evening, back to back, two like phenomenal episodes. That I don't remember being so excited to watch this particular series within the Star Trek universe, as I did Monday night watching those two episodes.
So
It was
here's my question to Aaron. So we have unarguably liked completely opposite episodes of you most of the time for very different reasons. Do you think that you will like Star Trek at the end? Based on the things that Nate and I say are the prevalent concepts, the storylines they're going to keep going through, the things we're going to continue to see, is it something that you think is actually something you're going to enjoy as they more start to embrace the things that Nate and I are talking about on these episodes versus the things that you see and like on the episodes you've seen thus far?
It's
I
such a
would think
great question.
I would think yes,
Well,
because
thank you.
I would say overall I've enjoyed this season more than either of you, because the differences we've really run into are not you guys loving episodes and me hating them, because the closest I've come to hating an episode is now agreeing like, okay, yeah, that was okay. But you guys viscerally disliked certain episodes that I thought were somewhere between okay to pretty good. Um, so I think yeah, I probably will. Uh, yeah, I think I will. I mean, I'm enjoying it so far. So and nothing to indicate that I won't. And I think there's a bigger the biggest differences we see are in episodes that I liked that you didn't care for or care about. And I haven't seen any of the episodes that have really made your argument for why those other episodes sucked. and not just in a sense of, yeah, you liking stuff that I didn't, but I've liked more in this series at least than I think you have to this point. Nate can tell us based on what our actual ratings are,
I'm refreshing right now.
what it is, but I know when he sent stuff out a couple weeks ago, I was just like, what I see here is that I like Star Trek more than you guys.
That's my concern though, because this isn't what
Um,
I like about Star Trek for the most part. And the
it is
episodes that
no
I
longer
see as
true,
Star
by
Trek.
the way.
Oh yeah.
The Abby now takes the lead with the highest overall
No,
average.
that's not accurate though, because I haven't gone back and re-ranked
Then you need to go do
without
that.
guilt.
But-
My first rankings were guilt-ridden for not wanting to totally trash
But
something.
here's the thing. I have an average score right now of 7 for my top 10 episodes, right? Yours, Aaron, is 7.5. So
Yeah.
it's not a huge difference. And we still have to cover the fact that in general, the original series is my least favorite of them.
Oh yeah.
So we're starting out with, from my perspective, the worst. Now I'm super excited about what I've watched so far because I've clearly just never taken the time to really watch and understand and analyze these. So I'm a little surprised at how much I'm enjoying this, but I don't think we're that far off.
So I'm really looking at it and seeing it as, okay, I've heard this is probably one of the lesser series and I'm already enjoying it.
Yep.
So, I mean, unless something turns around and I'm just like, man, next gen sucks, which I don't gather will happen, seeing as I was nothing had ever drawn me into anything Star Trek previously, and I'm looking forward to every time I sit down to watch an episode. So
That's what concerns me slightly,
hearing that it only gets
that you
better,
like it. That you like these. Like, what if you think that's what it's going to be in all these, and the episodes that you do like on these are the ones where like, we don't like these. And because it's not like those in the future. So my fear is that you like these and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't like those new ones. That doesn't meet the same criteria.
Well, but I'm not sure if that, I mean, I have no idea. Maybe that will happen, but I've also said that some of the episodes I've really liked so far that you didn't were because I liked some of the philosophical discussions they had, and even if we came to different conclusions on that, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And the kind of response was like, oh, wait till next gen, wait till the other series, which are much more that way. So if anything, the things that you've said make me think that I'll like those even more than I like these ones. And I'm also going in with an attitude of, I really want to enjoy all of these.
I mean, Aaron always has an attitude.
He's got an attitude. You heard it straight from his mouth.
Yes.
With an attitude.
I'm coming into these with a thought of, I really want to enjoy these. So maybe that is coloring it a bit and I'm thinking more highly of these than I might if I revisit them after watching a lot more. But I'm going in and I think I'm needing to really be sold that an episode sucks for me to not have a positive spin on it.
We're gonna get there. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm sure.
Season 3 is just,
you can't have 800 episodes without a few duds in there. So, I mean, there might be even series that are just like, oh God, this is a slog. Can we get through this?
Yeah, that's Deep Space Nine.
Oh, be
Nathan.
quiet. Go away. How dare you? That's seasons 1 and 2 of Enterprise. Seasons 3 and most of 4.
What do you have against sexy Vulcan girl that adds so much to the plot?
We'll have so much to talk about there. We're not even going to derail this conversation with that because
been a long time.
Greatest Star Trek theme song ever right there. You cannot, that song is a banger and I don't care what you say.
First time they've ever used words in a theme song.
Well, so yes, but did you know that there are words to the theme song from the original series? They were never aired.
But now I'm pretty sure you need to sing them though.
I don't know what they are, so good luck to you on that one. But Gene Roddenberry wrote lyrics to the theme song to the original.
Google it. to the Google machine.
Yeah. So I think I have nothing yet that indicates to me that I won't enjoy the other series. And it's one of those that I've heard it only gets better from here. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating. And maybe this will be a short-lived podcast if that whole thing changes and I think the other series are terrible. But
This will make life really interesting. I have the lyrics. Does anyone want
Yeah.
the lyrics?
Sure.
And I'm not singing it because I'm a terrible singer and nobody wants to hear this, but it's beyond the rim of the starlight. My love is wandering in starflight. I know he'll find in star clustered reaches love, strange love a star woman teaches. I know his
I think you
journey-
need to go back. Go back and begin it.
No, I told you I'm not singing this.
Oh, no, I'll sing the background. You just read over it.
No.
Da, da,
I know his journey
da,
ends
da,
never.
da, da,
His Star Trek will go on forever. But tell him while he wanders, his starry sea remember me. And those are the lyrics,
Aw.
the original series song.
Genie boy. Got so much feelings.
So romantic.
He was a very emotional person,
Clearly.
Mr. Roddenberry.
They just, it was never recorded or aired or anything. So technically Enterprise does have the first theme with actual words in the but that song is a banger. It is out of place, but it's a good song. When they up tempo it, like season 3, it's even better.
And they have a dog on the ship, so
Porthos.
Yeah.
Come on.
Again, let's talk about our love of Shakespeare.
It's
every captain.
And what was Patrick Stewart known for before Star Trek? He was a Royal Shakespearean actor.
Correct.
I was going to say Robin Hood Men in Tights, but that came after.
It did come after.
Okay, I've just got to say, I love Patrick Stewart in everything. Like, I would totally go see him in a play, Shakespeare. It doesn't have to be like Star Trek related. I just love Patrick Stewart.
I saw him in high school. I
just love him.
At the Guthrie, he did Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Oh, really?
It's phenomenal. It is. I mean, I've seen a decent number of plays over the course of my life. That is number one by a long shot. He was great.
Patrick Stewart, man, he's just he was
so born to be a stage actor. He just happens to be really talented on screen.
Well, I think that's why he was talented on screen, though, because he does it so. I don't know. He's just so good. And arguably, first season of Next Gen, like everything we talked about, it's just rough, a little bit rough. And he gets his stride in later seasons as well.
Yep.
And
he talks a lot about that.
It's just, but I think that's part of it. It makes sense, though. It's going to be awkward moments because the ship is still learning each other. So unlike other shows where you start off in the middle, like we start off, this is already a seasoned crew for the ship. They've been working together for a period of time. You don't know how far into their 5-year mission they are, but they're in the middle of this 5-year mission. They've known each other. They've been working.
Yep.
Versus Next Generation, where you're stepping into day one. A lot of this crew is brand new. He's meeting number one for the first time.
Yeah, he's taking command of the Enterprise.
He's seeing Dr. Crusher for the first time in 10 years, isn't it? Like, before Wesley was born. So, I mean, they've got a lot of really...
he knew Wesley. And Wesley remembers him.
But point being, it's been years and years, though.
Yeah,
it's not like we're not picking up Soprano style right in the middle of their lives.
Yeah.
We're picking up at the beginning of the story.
Well, there you go. 2 more episodes down and some bonus discussion about Next Generation, to which I was able to contribute nothing. I did have a few additional thoughts related to our discussion of Balance of Terror that didn't quite make the final cut. We had some more moments of the series throwing some, quote, space jargon into the episode. When they were 1 minute away from the neutral zone, they went to maximum warp. Now, why would you want to speed up when you're in such a precarious position near a zone which could trigger a galactic war if you breach it? But saying maximum warp sounds kind of spaceshipy, I guess. When first watching Balance of Terror, I didn't explicitly think of the Romulans as the Russian side of the Cold War. I did, however, make note of the movie Enemy at the Gates about the Battle of Stalingrad from World War II. If you haven't seen it, that movie is about opposing snipers during that battle, hiding, waiting for their opponent to make a mistake, waiting, and then waiting some more. In the episode, I felt like this did a great job of building tension. Abby and Nate both felt it with The Conscience of the King, and I felt it with Balance of Terror, but we all seem to agree that with these episodes, the original series is really finding its footing. It's hitting its stride. The actors seem to have a good command of their characters. While the world building is continual, the world is sufficiently built and believable. So much of what we've seen to this point has either been mission centric, like checking in on a research outpost in the man trap. Other episodes have been very focused on the threat of the week. But in each of this week's episodes, we got a glimpse into life on a starship in the midst of a long mission. We saw the ship's theater and the performing troupe. It seemed odd to me at first that the Enterprise had a full theater, but they're not on double red alert all the time, so it makes sense that there would be some place for entertainment on board. It's not like they can go anywhere else. We also saw a wedding. Now, with these, we were reminded of the risks being taken by the crew who undertook this mission. It added an amount of reality to the episodes, a connection to the crew by seeing them not necessarily just as their rank, but as people with lives beyond simply their station on the ship. I feel like I say it every week, but I'm still enjoying these episodes. Abby asked me if I think I'll enjoy the other series as much, and I think I will. The things I have enjoyed, Abby and Nate largely say only get better in future series. You think the original series is philosophical? Just wait till we get to Next Generation. Now, looking ahead, I'm not trying to rush through the original series, and I don't feel like it's a chore or a slog to get through. But I am excited to get to the stuff that most of the Trekkies around me love, mainly Next Generation. So, starting next week, we will be discussing 3 episodes instead of 2. I've already noticed that a lot of our conversations repeat previous talking points, and that's fine. There's still been plenty for us to talk about. But we also want to keep our watch through moving. By no means am I sick of the original series. There's just so much out there to watch, and I want to actually get to it. So if you're watching along with us, next week we'll be watching the next 3 episodes of the original series: Shore Leave, The Galileo 7, and The Squire of Gothos. Part of me can't believe we're already about halfway through season 1 of the original series. I, for one, am still enjoying the ride. I want to thank you again for joining us on this journey through the world of Star Trek. If you like what we're doing here, please leave us a rating and a review. For Abby and Nate, this is Aaron, reminding you to never give up, never surrender.
And it was good. I appreciate it. I'll give it an 8, maybe even 8.5. I really did like it.